Hello, art friends. Welcome to Monet Cafe Studio. Today, I'm trying something totally new. I actually repainted one of my own pastel tutorials using a super affordable set of pastels by Paul Rubens, a budget-friendly brand I often recommend to beginners. This new 48 color set is full of gorgeous hues. But could it really hold up against my professional Terry Ludwig pastels? The results honestly surprised me, and I think they might surprise you too. Let's dive in and see how they compare. As I mentioned, I did something I've never done before. I painted from one of my own tutorials, which was actually really fun. Now, I will have the link to this first tutorial of this painting lesson in the description of this video. And in that lesson, I created an underpainting using an alcohol wash. I will be doing the same thing for this painting before adding the Paul Rubens pastels. And I'm first just going to give you a sneak peek at how I used these Terry Ludwig pastels, a brand that I love, a very professional brand, great people at Terry Ludwig Pastel Company. And this is a set that I highly recommend. It's there. It used to be called the Maggie Price set, and now I think it's just called the Basic Values. But how will these Paul Rubens, this little 48 set, compare to these professional Terry Ludwig pastels? Well, you're about to find out. I want to thank Paul Rubens for being very faithful to send me their sets of pastels, especially when they have a new collection, and this is their 48 set. The other product that I'll be using during this tutorial is this surface I love. It's a Mazzouli art pad. It's offered by Dakota Pastels. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But let's first dive into this little set of Paul Rubens pastels. It's their 48 set. It's a newer set or collection of colors. They have larger sets also. And I wanted to show you something I do to test my soft pastels for their vibrancy and just softness. And I just call it a finger test. I rub my finger across the pastels. And if you pick up a lot of color, you can usually tell if that's going to be a quality pastel that gives you a great application and some layering ability. And if you guys are subscribers or you're a patron of mine, you probably know I want to be so honest and transparent about products that I share on my YouTube channel. In other words, I won't just give a good review because a company gifted me a product like this. And you know how they often say you get what you pay for? Well, sometimes you get more than you pay for. As in this case, I really believe the price for this set of pastels for the quality is outstanding, especially for beginner artists. And currently on Amazon, it's $25 or $26. And that's really outstanding for 48 pastels. And if that price wasn't already amazing, it gets even better. Paul Rubens let me know that they are going to offer a 15% off discount if you use the code SusanJ15. I'll also put that in the description of this video. I really wanted to talk about this surface, even though I'm talking a lot about the Paul Rubens pastels. This is an art pad that I got from Dakota Pastels, and I really love it for multiple reasons. I'm going to share some of that with you. I love the spiral binding up top, and you're going to learn more about that in just a second. I love the fact that it's a great quality soft pastel surface. You can get a lot of layers. It's water friendly. I really love that it has these tracing paper pages in between the sheets. This is a painting tutorial I did, I guess during Farm Month a couple of months ago. And it was more of a sketch and just a fun exploration of color, and my first time trying this pad. And I think you can see the results are great. I did do a wet underpainting, and this particular pad, it comes in some different colors. I think only one size, but each pad has some different colors in it. This pad has mostly light colored pages in it. But again, I just love the spiral binding and that I can keep my art protected in it until I frame it. And now it's time to get started with this underpainting. And I chose colors equivalent to the same colors that I used for my first painting tutorial. I was following my own tutorial, and I realized a lot of these colors are actually in the Paul Rubens set or something close enough. So I really could have used a lot of almost 100% of these colors for this video. There are a few exceptions though. And you could see a brush there in the foreground, and that's because I'm going to be doing an underpainting using alcohol. I like to use 70% rubbing alcohol. It doesn't smell quite as bad as the 90%. This is just regular drugstore alcohol, and I have tons of videos on why I do an underpainting. And I just started with a simple sketch. I'm just using a pastel pencil that's a little bit a purplish tone. You could use whatever, pencil, charcoal. And again, I have my iPad in front of me following my own lesson. I learned a lot by following my own lesson. One thing was I was happy to see it was easy to follow. So that made me really happy. All right, so I have a pretty purple, a dark purple that I put down to get some darks. I have a kind of a cool red, almost like a pinkish red. And then I layered down a little bit of a deeper kind of orange red. All right, so I'm doing my underpainting in layers. I like to use a stiff bristle brush. That one's just a real cheap one. I think I found it on Amazon, and I've been using this brush for years, but it's a little bit textural. And notice I'm just adding alcohol to the brush, kind of fluid, and moving it around directionally in the direction that the trees or the grasses would be growing. And I have sped this up substantially. By the way, my Patreon version for this video is almost all real time with some extra goodies. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And I'm actually going to grab some of the Paul Rubens pastels right now. Like I said, I realized after I'd pulled out my underpainting colors with different pastels that I really could have used like this pink. It was real close to the other one I had picked out. So I used a majority of Paul Rubens for this painting, even a lot of the underpainting. Again, I have so many lessons on why to do an underpainting. If you're brand new to my channel, I have more instruction on that. Okay, so I'm lifting up some of the Paul Rubens pastels here that I've used already. Well, that blue one I'm actually going to use. Now I'm going to liquefy the dry pastels. I just put down the little orange color and the pink color, and that is actually what I'm doing with alcohol or water. You could use water to do this. Alcohol just dries faster. And I'm liquefying the pastels. I'm turning the dry medium into paint by wetting it. It's really simple and really cool. And I can move it around. You see how I'm taking some of the pink and I'm moving it. So I'm literally like I'm painting. And now I'm in the third phase of this underpainting where I'm adding my lighter values and colors. And it's this pretty light pink from the Paul Rubens set. And the lightest elements in this image were the sky and the water, obviously. And you can do an underpainting with just one color and just use different values. I do that all the time, like just a purple, and you have the trees the darkest, the land kind of the middle value, and the sky the lightest values. And now I'm using the alcohol once again just to liquefy those light values. And by the way, it looks darker, of course, when it's wet, and then when it dries, lightens up. And I'm going to actually blow dry it right here. I had kind of a lot of water in the water. So you'll see it lightening up magically before your eyes. Could I ask you a quick little favor before continuing? Would you click that like button? You can't believe how much that does for my videos. YouTube will share it more. Of course, subscribe and leave me a comment if you like. And now I have a great roadmap with some nice values and complementary colors underneath this painting. I added a little red just for fun, and I'm playing with some of the Paul Rubens colors. Now, I had lost some of my darks because of liquefying it. It will lighten it up. Even whatever the color the main pastel is, once you wet it, it's going to kind of lighten it up for the final. So I'm adding more of that purple. And I was looking at a dark that's in the Paul Rubens set, and I realized I could have used that dark. I'll be using it again in a minute, and you'll see. And I wanted to let you know, I have something over on my Patreon page that is a graphic that I made sharing what pastels I don't recommend getting for beginner artists. Now, these Paul Rubens pastels, I always recommend them for beginner artists because they really are a good quality. But I share a bit more personally over on my Patreon page that I almost quit pastel painting. I didn't know what I was doing. I had some time in my life. My children were getting bigger, and I wanted to try to start painting, and I found a set of pastels in a hobby shop. And on this graphic, I share what that name brand was. And again, be careful with hobby shops and and it is better to get good quality pastels. And these Paul Rubens pastels just happen to be a good quality. I wouldn't say a great quality, but a good quality, especially for the price. All right, let's continue. I am done with the wet part of this, the underpainting, and I'm going to use a little tool to blend. I want to soften this up a bit. You still see a lot of the paper showing through, and I'm using a little thing in my hand that's actually a piece of pipe foam insulation. Literally what it sounds like. It's what you use to insulate your pipes in cold climates. It's kind of black and spongy. It comes in these long tubes, and it works great for blending. Rest of this is going to be with Paul Rubens pastels from this little set, and just a few greens, a couple of other colors from the Terry Ludwigs, because I just couldn't quite match some of the colors, but it's almost 100% Paul Rubens. So you can see there's a nice variation of blues with different values, and I often like to share that I keep my lightest values in the sky down towards the horizon line, and it gradually gets darker as you go up into the sky. Now there's that pretty blue I had lifted up earlier. It's a gorgeous blue for distant trees, and you might be thinking, trees aren't blue. Well, I am going to add some green on the top, lightly layering. This surface that I'm using, the Mazzouli art pad, really does allow for nice layering, and that blue will cause those trees to feel like they're further away. Color temperature gets cooler in the distance, so it's really good to lay down a cooler color first and then glaze over some greens. So I used a little bit of that lighter blue just to push some of those trees back further. Values get lighter in the distance. So I'm kind of comparing some greens here right now, and this is the one I told you about. It's a dark pastel in the Paul Rubens set. It looks almost like it's gray, but can you see it was like a foresty green I just put down? And again, I'm going to mention that my Patreon version of this video is almost 100% real time, but you get so much here on the Monet Cafe channel as well in this free version. And by the way, my Patreon page is very reasonable. Let me take a little station break here. It's only $5 a month to unlock hundreds of lessons with extra content, extra goodies, and I love the part that you get to be part of my Patreon community. You share your work. I have lots of goodies and contests and prizes. It's a lot of fun. And I have a 50% discount. I think it's going to like maybe mid-August. That's the coupon code you would use. And hey, it's 50% off of $5. So, you know, every little bit counts though, right? Also have that code in the description of this video. All right, let's get back to painting. So you can see I used some of the blues, the same blues from the sky in the water, because the sky is going to reflect into the water. I used a little bit of that lavender and a little darker blue, kind of to give a bit of value for the reflection of those trees. And now I'm lifting up some of the greens. This is a brighter green, and I'm using it on the distant hill because it's further away. Values get lighter in the distance. And it was one of the lightest greens. I think it was the lightest green in the set. So I'm gradually getting a little cooler and a little darker in value. And I'm doing that because some of these grasses are kind of shadowed by some of the trees. They're kind of rolling up into the hill or behind some trees in this case. And this is a really pretty cool green. And often your grasses, if they're in deep grasses, they're going to cool off in color temperature. It won't be as much of a yellow green, but it'll be more of a teal green when you're in the shadowed areas. Here you can see where I grabbed one of my Terry Ludwig pastels. Can you see the color of that one? It's very earthy, whereas the Paul Rubens pastel set, the 48 set here, is very vibrant colors, and I don't want to say artificial, but a little bit punchy, and sometimes you need a neutral color to calm things down. Now, you can make your own neutrals. There's a way to do that. I have a video on that, but that's, again, a whole nother lesson. These are some nice little kind of neutral, earthy, brownish colors. And even though you probably saw at the beginning of this video, the flowers are going to be yellow, but I often like to get in a deeper yellow. A deep yellow is actually a brown, or dark yellow, I should say, or a rusty color. And then I gradually layer some orange colors on top. That's going to give a contrast of value, something to lay these yellow colors on. If I just started laying the yellow on top of these grass shapes, they're really just not going to show up or not have any depth to them. So that's a typical strategy with pastel painting, is to layer dark and then middle, and then lightest values. I love that little mustardy color. Now this is a Terry Ludwig. I was kind of doing a test myself to see how it was applying versus the Paul Rubens. And look at there, the Paul Rubens, this little Dijon mustard ochre color, is layering quite well, even though I have quite a few layers already down. And I'm just playing and learning about this little set as I'm painting, and I will say I was very pleased, and I was mostly pleased that I can recommend this set to beginner artists. Now I just used that dark color I was telling you about before. See how it had that dark foresty green to get in some depth in the foreground, and you can see in the distance I finally added a little cool green on top of those blue trees, and you see how those trees feel further away, and popping in a few more flowers here and there. Now I'm going to jump ahead. The Patreon version has again the full content, but I'm going to jump ahead and show you more about what this final looks out and talk more about these Paul Rubens pastels. And be sure to stay tuned to the end, because I am going to show you a comparison of the original painting that was done with Terry Ludwig pastels and this painting primarily with the Paul Rubens set. So you can see I got some lighter values, and the Paul Rubens are still layering, and I'm kind of developing a few of these flowers with a little more dark down towards the bottom where the stem meets the flower. That was one of the brightest yellows, and now I'm getting in a lighter value, this light lavender, down in the distant tree line where those furthest trees are, and it really pushed that back again with perspective. And now I've got a pretty green in this set. This is a more natural green. It's real earthy. I put a little down in the water for a reflection, and see how I finally did layer over those dark blobs of trees to give it some green. And I'm just playing at this point. This is where I'm putting in my little spicy marks. These pastels also work great for getting in nice gestural stems, and I really wanted to get some blue in that foreground, so I just used my artistic license and put in some brilliant blue flowers. So all in all, I was so pleased with this set. Again, I get excited about being able to offer nice sets for beginners and supplies for beginners, because that's who I was. I did not have the money to spend on a lot of expensive materials. You can see the pastels I used there. Here's a close-up of the painting. Look at that. Look at all this color and texture. Yes, it is impressionistic. If you're on my channel much, you know I like that crazy impressionistic style, but the color is vibrant. I have no filter on this. This is actually what it looks like. Those were the original pastels I used. Again, I didn't use all of them. I used some of the Paul Rubens, even for the underpainting. So again, you can see the pastels used right here. I have them all lifted up. So if you get this set, be sure to use that coupon code for an additional 15% off. I'm showing you the first painting. After this title goes away, you'll be able to see it. But this is the one that was done with the Terry Ludwig set. I did just do a little spray fixative. That's why it looks textural there. But this is the painting done with the Paul Rubens set. Again, more vibrant, a little bit more saturated with color, but still very effective and a very great set. All right, everyone, I'm so blessed to have you as a visitor, hopefully a subscriber soon to this channel. And as always, God bless and happy painting.